Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Hello, I'm Matt Hansen.
And I'm Lee Hutchison.
And welcome to the Senate floor.
Let the filibustering begin.
Welcome to Nerd Party.
Hi everybody, welcome to this next edition of the Filibuster on the Senate floor. Yes, it's a filibuster because we're doing this all backwards. We're flipping the schedule because, something
We've just gone through a hole in the space-time continuum.
Yes, exactly. Speaking of holes in the space-time continuum, something big happened this weekend, Lee.
That's right. Star Trek Beyond is finally here.
And the reason we're doing this filibuster versus another Senate floor is because Tristan and his wife are doing their own review of the movie on Nerd Nuptial this week. And Lee and I didn't want to wait weeks before we could talk about this film, so we decided they'll do the Nerd Nuptial and we'll do the filibuster review.
It's going to be good. You'll probably get two different sides of the coin when it comes to this debate. We both have our own different and unique ways of talking about Star Trek and these movies, so I'm looking forward to hearing their views tomorrow, and then by the time this comes out, you'll probably heard their views, and then you'll get us on the Wednesday.
So let's talk a little bit about this film. So the first time you saw it, Lee,
the
first time you saw it was on Thursday. You did the triple bill, right?
I did the IMAX triple bill, yeah. I went to see it, started at 7 o'clock, and I went with my girlfriend, huge Star Trek fan, and I went with two friends who they would call themselves Star Trek fans, but really only of the Kelvin movies. They're not. Yeah, they wouldn't sit down and watch, the Whale movie or sit down for a marathon of the Dominion War episodes in Deep Space Nine. They're just not into that stuff.
They're casual fans.
Yeah, we had my favourite seats, the back row, middle in the IMAX. And yeah, we started with '09, and I always think that's an amazing advert for IMAX. It's 2D. The Kelvin stuff is absolutely sensational. I always remember that when the Kelvin smashes into the Narada, I think that's called.
Narada, yeah.
You feel the shake in the IMAX screen. It's like it really hammers home.
I really think, if memory serves, like when mainstream films started to be shown in IMAX, because it wasn't really that long ago. I think Dark Knight and Star Trek '09 were the first ones that I remember, like mainstream films that were presented in the IMAX format.
Yeah, just actually 8 years ago today on recording, The Dark Knight actually came out here in the UK, so you could say IMAX has really steadily been building since that day. And Star Trek '09 is a brilliant experience in IMAX.
So how was Into Darkness?
Yeah, I mean, Star Trek Into Darkness for me is one of the best adverts for IMAX. It's up there with Skyfall and the Nolan movies in the IMAX experience. I've told my girlfriend for years how amazing the IMAX is in Star Trek Into Darkness when you see the Vengeance in the same warp tunnel as the Enterprise, and it's just like the scope and the scale and the use of the audio tracks in IMAX are just amazing. So Into Darkness killed it again in the IMAX for me. The same flaws are still there, but I still think it's a great experience.
You know what I would love seeing, because I imagine it's such a gorgeous IMAX picture, and I don't have true IMAX here, is that the stare down between the Enterprise and the Vengeance when the Vengeance first appears.
Oh yeah, like you feel it, and it's the sound of it. Like it's an amazing scene in IMAX. Just when it comes out, it takes up the whole screen, and you're just like, that moment in The Simpsons where Milhouse is playing the game, like he sets up Thrill House, and you just see him like radiated and blue, feeling the G-forces from his TV with his video game. That's what that's like for me.
Well, not just that.
Scene
I would love to see the next shot that happens right after that, where it's the two ships. The Enterprise is in the left half of the frame, and the Vengeance is on the right half, and they're just staring down each other.
Yeah. Oh, it's so cool. And Cumberbatch as well in IMAX is a dream come true for this Matt fan, and I could feel my girlfriend's ovaries shaking at the sight of Cumberbatch on this IMAX screen with his gorgeous eyes and his deep booming voice. Or maybe that was me. It's hard to tell.
Right. Well, so after Into Darkness, how much time did you have before you settled into the new movie?
11 minutes, so enough time for a quick toilet break, stretch the legs, and then straight in. We didn't have any adverts or anything like that. It was IMAX countdown, and straight in we go.
Really, that's interesting because I didn't get to do the marathon this time just because I couldn't take time off of work. But even when I did the marathon for Civil War, when we got to Civil War at the end of it, they still played us trailers and everything.
Yeah, I was expecting it too because I was a bit slow in coming back from the toilet. I was just casually walking. But because we got like the adverts at the start of the triple bill, and then it was straight in to it, and I thought, oh, usually you get the adverts and then you get some new trailers, etc. But no, they just went straight into Star Trek Beyond, which was good. I was like, no waiting around. Here we go.
So okay, so you sit there, you watch the new movie. Your thoughts coming out of the theater the first time?
Yeah, I really enjoyed it the first time. It's always tricky to get your kind of initial thoughts because you're viewing it almost in not a perfect situation. You're a bit tired, you've been in the cinema, you've seen two movies that are, you're going into a third movie on the back of two really excellent movies, so it's quite hard not to compare it. You're going in with a lot of baggage. So I really enjoyed it. I felt like it was I Told You So, that I said from December when we got that first trailer that I was expecting a Star Trek movie where it was going to be focused on the cast, that it was going to be about them using their wit and their will to overcome a situation on an alien planet with new creatures, new civilizations, and I got what I wanted, so I came out quite proud. I didn't come out where I was thinking, oh wow, like I was totally blown away, or I was coming out thinking, the action sequences are alright, and I wasn't really thinking about that, but I was so happy with the cast being like front and center. And one of my main thoughts coming out of the triple bill was, with it being like a triple bill, it's quite an intense viewing, and to kind of watch Nimoy and Yelchin over the 2 and the 3 movies was a bit heartbreaking, to be honest, especially seeing 09 and going through like Yelchin's journey. Like, you're looking at him and he's just this youthful, happy, vibrant person, especially in 09, and you just, when he's looking at the camera, you feel like he's looking into you, and you're watching him and you're just thinking, like, every time he's on the screen you're kind of like, oh man, he is dead. And that was quite tough.
We'll have to talk about him once we get into the new film itself, but I'll say that it really hit me hard watching the new film because I think he gives his best performance in Star Trek Beyond.
Yeah. What was your experience like, Matt?
So I didn't get to do the triple bill, but I did go on Thursday, which is something that I said last show I probably wasn't going to get to do because I had
listener knew you were lying.
Because I had work the next day, and I could, like, whenever I do the night before showings, I've always like taken the next day off. That way I don't have to worry about it. I can enjoy myself. But it was a stressful week. I was quitting work, and I thought, you know what? There's a 7 p.m. showing, and a whole lot of my friends are going to it. So the hell with it. I have to see it tonight.
To hell with our orders.
So I went, and actually, there were more people than I thought there would be, and so I watched the movie, and we walk out of the theater, and I turned to my friend because I saw this is the same group of people that I saw Into Darkness with 3 years ago, and we all enjoyed that film very much. But we walked out of the theater and we start talking about this film, and it's something that I'm sure you and I are going to talk about. The sentiment was, and we're all big Star Trek fans, this of the 3 films felt the most original series, like the closest to the spirit of the original series that the Kelvin timeline has ever gotten. And I think there was something about that quality. I didn't necessarily walk out like jazzed the same way I was walking out of 09, but when I started thinking about it, and then I saw it again, and we're going to get to our second viewings in a second, but when I saw it again, I just thought, you know what, I may not walk out of this film as with an adrenaline boost, but I think I walked out of this film the happiest, if that makes any kind of sense.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, like I said, this might be my hype train, like Into Darkness all over again, but I don't think so. No. It's hard to say. I'll give it some time, but at this point, walking out of this film, I think I was the most satisfied, even though I wasn't like jumping off the walls.
I can relate to that. I think you're onto something.
So what was, so you just actually had your second viewing experience today. I went the next day.
Yeah, literally 1 hour ago.
I went the next day. I went on Friday with a big crowd, and it played well again. And like I said, I ended up walking out more satisfied. So how did your second experience go?
Yeah, I was hoping to go on Friday. Obviously, I live right next to the cinema and I can kind of go whenever I want with my pass. I got a wisdom tooth extracted because it was growing in at a ridiculous way on Friday. So I had intentions of going in the afternoon, but I obviously had quite a lot of blood loss and I was really tired from the night before, so I ended up I was quite drugged up, and I thought it's maybe not the most ideal time to go see Star Trek, so I just went for a nap instead. And I was doing a bit of work yesterday, so I thought, right, I'm going to go today. I want to see it again before the show and everything like that. And the first thing that really struck me is that when you go to these like midnight showings, it's probably different from the 7 p.m. ones, but the midnight ones, you've got like the hardcore fans, that you've got people that are willing to go into work the next day really tired, or students. You've got a kind of really niche audience that go to these midnight things, so it's hard to sometimes get an accurate portrayal of the type of people that this is going to appeal to. You're kind of going into an echo chamber of fans essentially. So when I went in today, I was immediately struck by, and admittedly it was a Sunday afternoon, but it's got the competition with a British an adaptation of a famous British book, BFG. So I thought, we'll see what the crowd's like. And there was families there, there was people of all ages there, women, males. It was really broad, and I thought, oh man, this is a really good sign. I was really happy with that. So I went in. And I came out of it, like I was saying, that I came out the first time, I really enjoyed it, but I didn't have that kind of wow, like I've been totally blown away. But this time I came out, I felt like really satisfied. The things that I really liked about the movie were still there, and I was starting to appreciate little things a bit more, and picking up on some of the more, some of the themes of the movie, and I could see parallels between what could have been going through Simon Pegg's mind when writing this movie, and little small Easter eggs and details that the crew put in. And I came out like really, really appreciating the movie a lot more. And it's something I've said a lot of times, that you have to go into sometimes these movies with a second viewing with fresh eyes and just letting it breathe.
It's something I said on the previous show too. Whenever I see a movie for the first time, sometimes I don't always get the full enjoyment that I will on repeat viewings, because that first time I'm paying attention to, okay, what is the plot of this movie and where is this going? And I'm not paying attention to the nuances, and I'm not paying necessarily more attention to the direction or anything. I'm mainly paying attention to plot. And that's why I like going on the second viewing, because then now that I know what the plot is, now I can start looking at the other things.
Yeah, like when you go in, sometimes your first viewing into films, it's like it's a base level thing almost, that you're going in and you're just taking everything at face value, and you don't have time to almost just live in the movie, that you're just letting it wash all over you, and before you know it, sometimes the film is over. With the second one, you're more likely to just kind of relax in your seat, and you're just starting to pick up the little things that Spock might be front and center in the screen, but you can start to notice little things in the background, the little details, and it starts to come alive in a way that these things often don't on a first viewing. It's, you can appreciate things on a technical level a lot more. You can appreciate things on a writing level a lot more, acting wise. There's so many little things that you can pick up, I think, a second time.
Yeah. And what was heartening to see this weekend is that we talked last show about how the reaction post Into Darkness was very, very divisive, and we saw more than our disproportionate amount because you and I follow a lot of fellow Star Trek fans.
Yeah.
And I don't know what your experience is, but the reaction that I'm seeing after this weekend, this may not make as much money as Into Darkness did, but it's doing solid business, at least here in the States. But I think I consider it a big victory that, at least from my Twitter feed, the reactions to this movie are almost wholly different than the ones from Into Darkness, in that they're almost all universally positive from the hardcore.
Yeah, it really seems to be resonating with people. Like, I follow quite a lot of film geeks on Twitter, like outside of Trek Twitter, and they really seem to be resonating with the movie as well, like really enjoying it in perhaps a more, simpler way. For us, it's a lot more like, I saw a thing a few weeks ago where someone was talking about that for us Star Trek fans, this is like Christmas Day. This is like once every 3-4 years special event. For a lot of film fans, like, a new Star Trek movie is like, oh, I'll go see that. I'll see that Star Trek movie's out this week, and they go along and it's a normal experience, and they enjoy it as much as something, and then the next week they move on to the Bourne movie or whatever, and like they seem to be really enjoying it as well. It really seems that there's a real united federation of good vibes about this movie.
Yeah, and that's the most important thing I think for me, is that this is not going to be summer 2013 again, where we're all bickering and debating, and it's getting a little ugly. I think we've all kind of universally embraced this film for the most part, and that's the best thing that can happen for a 50th anniversary film, I think.
Exactly. It feels like everyone's just come together and like rallied around the movie, and it doesn't feel like people are just saying they like it for the sake of falling in line or because they feel that they have to like it. Like at the end of the day, if I was real excited for this movie and if it was rubbish, I would say it was, and it might even be rubbish, but I know maybe in time I might come to like it. I've always got to be honest, like I can't sit here and talk for like an hour about a Star Trek movie that I didn't really like, and it would be obvious. I've always got to be honest with how I feel, and like as I say, I didn't come out thinking, oh wow, that was amazing. I came out like really enjoying it, and it's already starting to breathe now with me, and I'm looking forward to seeing where this relationship goes with this movie. It's going to be cool.
But I think it's a good sign that even when you come out in your first watching, even if you're not like bouncing off the walls, you can tell whether or not you generally liked it, and the fact that you did generally like it, that's a good sign.
Yeah, like what I really like. I mean, it, like for me, when I say it didn't have, say, perhaps the wow factor, like that ties into maybe why I like what the movie I really really like about the movie. Like Star Trek Into Darkness and Star Trek 09 are like wow movies. Like they are, faster, more intense, hyped up action adventure movies where everything's really dramatic, the music is intense, all these things. Like it's very overwhelming. You come out like, whew, like it's a real adventure to sit through. It's like a theme park ride.
I almost feel like, especially 09 had to be, because it was it was rebooting and reinvigorating the franchise. Into Darkness I still like, but it didn't necessarily have to be that way, but it was. And
in a way, like coming out not thinking, oh, like wow, with perhaps Beyond is actually the strength that I really wanted from it in the first place. Like I'm really glad that, like, I don't know necessarily the budget of this movie, but like it's not like it's had like hundreds and hundreds of millions splashed on it. Like it really seems like a kind of conservative effort to keep money in check, that they've not splashed it all on big action scenes and that go on for hours and hours. Like it almost feels like they've stripped it down to being about the characters, and it's like that, as you say, it feels like an original series movie, because like they've taken out action scenes and given it like the space to the characters that when you watch Into Darkness, for example, like Bones, Chekhov, Sulu are really lacking in the movie, and those are three characters I love. The actors I think are fantastic.
And even Uhura post the Klingon scene.
And then in this movie, like they're all given like relationships. It's all like the crew dynamics are there, that they've instead gone, who cares about some action scenes, to replace it with the characters. And as I've said a few times, I've been so fatigued with this summer for the movies. I feel like I've just sat through slogs of action and CGI, and when it's been good, it's been good, and when it's been bad, it's been bad. And it feels like almost a perfect antidote to a lot of these movies, the Batman v Supermans, the X-Men's, that have just been, about CGI and action over like character, heart and soul. And this movie has that in abundance. Like it's not a wow movie, it's a movie about something special. I think like family. I
think we can put this in the win column with Civil War for this summer.
Yeah, I would say that in terms of blockbuster movies, I would say Civil War and Beyond are the two best by some distance, I think.
But let's talk about that, because we should dive into the movie itself. And I think you're right. I think the purpose of this movie, and I noticed it's to the detriment of some of the reviews on Rotten Tomatoes, which I don't understand, but I think that the point of this movie was not for Justin Lin to come in and bring his necessarily same Fast and Furious vibe, although there was some of that, but it wasn't that wasn't the purpose of him coming in. The purpose of him coming in seemed to be to say what makes this ensemble special and what makes these characters special. And I think for an anniversary movie, especially a significant anniversary movie, that's the right impulse, the right thing to do. And it's something that Skyfall did back in 2012, is like we take a look at the characters and we see why we've stuck with them for 50 years. It doesn't necessarily call for the deconstructionism that Skyfall did, but that's the way it can go. I feel like here they didn't necessarily deconstruct the characters so much as put them in a situation where their qualities come out in spades, and it makes us realize why these characters are so iconic and why we've taken to them for 50 years. Is that kind of the vibe that you got from this?
Yeah, for sure. Like I've said, like consistently on this program, like I want these characters to be in a situation where they have to work together, where they're not all, it's like some people are just down in engineering, being like barely used. Like they're all in and around the same location, working together for a common goal. And like that's what I love, like when you see like Chekhov and Kirk working together, and Spock and Bones, and Uhura and Sulu, and Scotty, and like working, and it's like, and they all start to come together and they all meet up, and like you can tell these people love each other. That I always think of something, like one thing I was thinking about when I was like watching it today was there was a thing at school where they said that when you're wearing your school uniform, like you're out with the school, you're still representing the school, and you should always be an example to yourself and others. And, you know, you kind of laugh at that thinking, well, you know, school, I do my best at school time, and beyond that, no. But like when you're actually like, you watch these people that they're wearing the uniform, and even how they conduct themselves in, say, the interviews and out in public, like these people make you proud to be, you know, Star Trek fans. They're like a true example of the Gene Roddenberry vision and why we want to be like back in this crew. That it was just before the movie started on Thursday, I thought, holy hell, like we've been with this cast for 7 years, like excluding the, you know, period of time before that with like casting announcement.
It's almost like that's as long as the a lot of the TV shows. So
yeah, Voyager and Deep Space Nine, we had the same cast for that long as well. It blows your mind.
Even though we've only seen them for 3 2-hour periods at this point, I felt like the way that they are in this film, and we can talk about it, let's go more in depth to the characters in the story, but the way they are in this film, it almost reminds me as if these characters got 7 seasons and we're seeing the 7th season versions of them, if that makes any sense. They're almost all fully realized. Definitely.
I mean, we could dive into Kirk first, because you know, obviously the Trekkies we are, that we've got like, you know, hundreds of hours of knowledge we can dive into. And I thought, for example, the Kirk plot line reminded me of like season 5 Janeway in that episode. I don't know if you remember Night. Yeah,
they're both disillusioned captains.
Yeah, like they're captains that are, you know, been on this mission for a long time. They're really doubting whether they're doing the right thing, whether this is like their place. Which
that's a big shift for Kirk, as you and I know as fans, because if you watch William Shatner's Kirk in the original series, he loves what he's doing and he loves the Enterprise, and you know, you get the sense that Chris Pine likes the Enterprise and he gets along with his crew just fine, but I think it's a very interesting twist that, you know, you're 3 years into a 5-year journey and you're kind of wondering, you know, we're out here, we're doing all this stuff, what's it really building to? I like that. I like that twist.
I think so as well, and it also is, you know, leads into that while the two Kirks are similar in a lot of ways, they are both different. Like command came to this Kirk a hell of a lot earlier, that he's always been burdened with command, whereas the other Kirk perhaps got to blossom and grow into, you know, command roles, whereas this one, it was thrust upon him almost. And
he says it in that, it's a great scene with McCoy at the beginning here where they're drinking together. It's very, you know what it reminded me of, because it's Kirk's birthday and here comes McCoy with the drink. It's very, very Star Trek too. But he says it, the big difference between Pine's Kirk and Shatner's Kirk is that Pine's Kirk didn't join Starfleet because he really truly believed in it. He joined because Christopher Pike dared him.
Yeah, like he did it, you know, like And then Bones was like, no, you did it to see if you could live up to your father. And then that's right in a way that Kirk's not really interested in taking on this command. But then when like patting is like, oh, your father, saved 800 lives in 12 minutes. I dare you to do better.
I love, by the way, that it's the birthday where he's outliving his father for the first year. That's a nice touch.
I know it's always that kind of. I've seen that before in like some movies and literature. That moment where like the son outlives the father in a way that's something pretty tough to deal with. I'm blessed in that I'm not in that position, but I can't imagine how much of a tough experience that is to be of an orphan son essentially.
Right, and so that's such a wonderful scene, and we get to see how it affects the rest of the crew. It's a nice little montage, and then we get. You said that this film wasn't concerned necessarily with huge action spectacles, but I think that they didn't skimp necessarily on how the film looks, because then you get the Enterprise arriving at Starbase Yorktown, which is quite a sight to behold in this film.
Yeah, it's so cool. Like, I'd only seen little glimpses of it here and there in the trailers and the adverts, so to see it like properly up on the IMAX screen for the first time was so awesome.
It's almost reminiscent of when the Enterprise comes back to Earth in 3, The Search for Spock, but it's so much more grander because this starbase is not just a ship thing in space. It's like its own contained world. It's got its own environment. It looks like it has its own sky, its own atmosphere. The buildings are all built on an angle, and it's just so cool. I've never seen anything like that before in any Star Trek.
Yeah, it's pure sci-fi, and I think Bones is right when it looks like a kind of snow globe in space. That I was sitting there looking, going, I'd be a bit terrified. It only seems like it's a thin bit of glass between us and being sucked out into space. So I thought that was like a really cool design, and and talking of Bones, it was so good to see him back and like given such a huge role.
This
because
is the most
Carl
Carl
Urban's one of their
ever done in these films.
Yeah, he's their MVP in a way that he's so good in this movie. And he's not just like the comic relief that some people just take him for. Like, he gets some of the great moments. Like, he's the person that these characters often come to and confide in, and we've seen that in the Star Trek movies and the TV series, that he is that more seasoned professional and person that can be this advice for the young bucks like Spock and Kirk.
Yeah, it goes back to what I've been saying about the characters. When we look at McCoy, they finally brought him back to what I've always liked. My favorite character, I think, out of the original series was McCoy. And the reason I liked him so much is that, you have, in these past 2 Kelvin movies, we've gotten to see the leadership of Kirk, and we've gotten to see the logic of Spock. But this one really highlights what DeForest Kelley's role, I thought, in the original series was, which is he's the passion, he's the wisdom, but he's also very, very emotional, and he in many ways one of the most human characters. And I thought that that's the quality that they were trying to highlight in this movie with McCoy.
Yeah, like Carl Urban, it was just so, I'm so happy to see him get a larger role at the expense of other time that the movie could have been used for, and he has the best lines, and those moments where like Spock's like, I was thinking of maybe leaving, and he goes, how would Jim take it? Me personally, I'd have a part. And he has that moment where he kind of he looks a bit sad, but he puts on that kind of brave smile, and I think he there's a lot going on there that he is excellent.
When we get to the planet, thank God, because like in the other 2 movies we've had our Spock McCoy moments, but we've never gotten to see them really play that dynamic that DeForest Kelley and Leonard Nimoy did. This time we got to see it with Zachary Quinto and Carl Urban, and it may be slightly new and modernized because they both have kind of different takes on their characters, but God, they nailed that dynamic like perfectly, I thought.
Yeah, and the fact that like Spock is able to confide in Bones, that they have been out in deep space for all these years, and like they've gotten a lot closer than both of them would probably like to admit. So the fact that Spock first confides in Bones about what's happened with Ambassador Spock was a really touching moment, and I could almost feel like it didn't kind of happen. I could almost feel like something twitching in my eye. I thought, oh no, don't make me cry here. Don't make me cry.
You know what? Let me save it for the end. But when we get to the end, the way that they handled the Leonard Nimoy tribute, yeah. I almost did cry. Like I was fighting back man tears.
You and me both, brother.
But so they get to the starbase, and we get to catch up with everyone. Uhura and Spock are breaking up, and that's such a wonderful thing from McCoy, where if an Earth girl says it's me, not you, it's definitely you.
Yeah.
And
wonderfully savage.
And shout out for this is what a few shows back, Lee. This is exactly the kind of gay representation that I wanted.
Exactly.
Sulu is gay in this universe, and it's not a big deal. He just meets up with his partner and their daughter, which in my mind, she's named Amora. It's just a thing that you see them interlock with each other, and they walk off, and I was like, perfect. That's exactly what I wanted.
Like, when I was watching that scene, that there was three things that I really liked about that scene. Was that, do you know who actually plays his husband,
it was
Ben?
the writer, Doug
Young.
Yeah.
So I'd read an interview with John Cho where he was talking about that scene, and they were like, we really struggled to find Asian actors that wanted to play a gay man because of the cultural issues that surrounds with in Korea. So Doug Young came on board and took on that role, and he said that he didn't want it to just be, say, Sulu and a white guy or a black guy or whatever. He said that because a lot of these actors felt that they couldn't do it because of the cultural pressures, he wanted to make it like, in a way, it's an inspiration within an inspiration, that some people might look at that and think, oh, that's great, there's a gay character in Star Trek. But some people might look at it at the other side of the world and go, it's good to see another Korean gay couple that perhaps in the future our world will be more accepting of it. So that was like a really nice touching moment to read about. And one thing I really liked in that scene was, I only noticed it properly the second time, that his little daughter is holding an Enterprise plush, that she's got a little Enterprise
Did she really?
toy
I
in her
didn't
hand.
notice that.
Yeah, it's like the one you can get in the shop. So this idea that she's carrying around an Enterprise that her dad serves on was just a lovely wee moment. Like, when I noticed that, I was like, oh man, that is just fantastic. And one moment I was so relieved, like obviously there's not been anything to say he is or isn't gay in the previous movies, but like in the moment when like they meet and like he's patting on the back and like Kirk's looking over his like flock of sheep, I thought, like, please don't have him, like, I thought he's looking around and he looks at Sulu and then they go off, and I just didn't want it to be a moment where like Kirk
he had no idea.
Wait, I had no idea. Oh wow. And then it's like that, it's just
Kirk just looks over and smiles,
and that's it, nothing more than that. And it was like, case we I was really stressed in that scene. I was like, please don't do that, please do not do that.
Well, it makes sense too, because I mean, they've spent 3 years together on this ship. They know something about each other's personal lives. At least the senior staff does.
Yeah, like Sulu's wearing a ring. It's not like they're gonna just be bored in space.
And he's got the picture on his console.
Exactly. Yeah, it was so well played, and I was happy with how it was done, and anyone that didn't like it, well, get out of the airlock.
Well, see what I liked about it, and I heard this on another show, and I forget which one. No, I do remember which one. I was listening to the Trek Off podcast, and when they reviewed this movie, the way that they handled it was like, it puts the fault of feeling uncomfortable on the viewer rather than the movie, because they don't do anything gratuitous. They don't open mouth. They don't do any. There's no sex scene. There's nothing. It's almost like, here it is. It's accepted, and if you're uncomfortable, that's your problem. And I like that about it.
Yeah, plain and simple. It was, and I loved it.
And the other scene that happens in the Yorktown that got to me was, it's the first time we bring up the fact that Ambassador Spock Prime has died in this timeline. And I knew that was probably going to be how they handled it, but at the same time, it never really struck me like really that hardly until he's looking at the pad with his picture and everything, and I'm like, wow, like, not only is Leonard Nimoy gone, the character is gone. There is no Genesis device. He's really gone, and it really sunk in for me at that moment.
Yeah, like, for me, I don't know what it says about me, but I didn't think they were going to make any reference to Leonard Nimoy dying. Obviously, it's time has passed, and you kind of forget it happened around the time of Pegg and Young like putting together the script. And I didn't think they were going to mention. I just thought like Spock's lived happily ever after, and it was that moment. Like it's almost like when you find out like your own like perhaps grandparent or a family friend has died, where like someone goes, "Can we have a wee word with you?" And you're like. It's that moment you know something bad's happened, and as soon as they said that, I was like, "Oh, they're gonna acknowledge it." And it in a way, it is really sad. Like,
he's really gone.
Especially when you've watched like the triple bill. Like, you've got 2 movies of this guy, and like he's so brilliant in Star Trek 09, and it still raises a smile in Into Darkness, and it was like, oh, it really is over. Like that's done. It's the end of the line, and it's handled so well. And the fact that it's not just like a wink that, oh yeah, he's dead. It's like that scene there, this chat between Bones, and then when you get obviously the photo later on in the movie, it really hits home. And even the absent friend.
I know we're
really
skipping. I know it's skipping to the end, but when he pulls out the photo of the original series, that moment for me was just, oh my god.
Like, I know people might think we're just skipping around, but, sometimes with these things, like, sometimes having a structure can kind of stifle conversation. Sometimes it's good to just, like this, just see where things go. And, if anyone, wants a bit more structure, I apologize.
I know we don't normally go through the plot, but this is the first time that, like, I've broken it down. I've actually gotten to talk to someone about this movie.
Yeah.
And I just want to talk
we'll
about
just do
everything.
It in our own little way. If people want to hear just probably plot by plot analysis, like, I'm sure that, well, sometimes it's good just to chat about it. This is what I've wanted for 3 days, just to chat. And I'm sure some people are probably listening like that are wanting something similar. So hopefully people are fine with something like this.
The other scene that I really liked in this Yorktown, before we move off it, that I really don't want to forget, is something that I heard that they came in reshoots, because it's the scene with, and I never can pronounce her name, but it's that Iranian actress with the deep voice that I love.
Yes.
Shora Agadashlu. I think that
I'm going to trust you on that one.
I know that's what it looks like, but I don't know if that's how you pronounce it. But
I'll stay safe. That actress that was amazing in The House of Sand and Fog.
But I really did enjoy her scene between her and Kirk. She's almost kind of like the Pike stand-in in this movie, if you will, the older authority figure who has been a captain and knows what it's like to she says in the trailer and in the scene, it's easy to get lost.
Exactly, and it so is that we've seen it before in Star Trek, and then we see it. We see it. With the crew later on in the movie, and it's like, yeah, it can be so easy to get lost. We all get lost, and we don't need to go out into deep space to get lost in ourselves sometimes, and especially in these like the world we live in, where things can be so overwhelming. It's so difficult sometimes to find who we are, where we belong in the world, and what the point of it all is at the moment. And that's something I'm sure many people can relate to, and that struggle to find ourselves sometimes.
Right. And so long story short, an alien played by that woman who was on Black Mirror that one time that I really liked, comes and says that her ship has crashed on some planet, and can someone come help her? It's behind some nebula that only the Enterprise can navigate. Although, did you pick up, and I knew that this is probably where they were going, in the scene between Kirk and the Commodore, she says, Kirk says, well, the Enterprise is one of the few that can navigate the nebula. And she says, we're working on a ship with more advanced technology, but it's still not done yet. I'm like, I know where this is going.
Yeah, I know where it's going to. I was like that one of like, we're going to see the A.
Well, yeah, let's save that for the end. But so they go into the nebula, and that's when that attack scene from the trailer begins. And I'll say this. I think that we've now seen 3 Enterprises destroyed on screen with this film. I'll say that I think the one in Star Trek 3 packs a more poignant punch because of how they have to do it. Mm-hmm. But if this makes any sense, I think that this one in this movie is the most fun to watch, because I've never seen a ship destroyed like this.
Yes, I'd agree with you there. I mean, it's hard. Like, time will judge it differently, and
again, you're getting our reactions post weekend, yeah. But like I said, I recognize that the one in Search for Spock is still the most impactful because of what they're doing. But this one was just, if anything felt like the last 2 films, it was this scene watching the Enterprise get get destroyed by like this swarm of ships. And I just love how, you know, everything that they try to do, they do all the right things, but nothing is working. And just like when the attack begins, they immediately like tear off the nacelles, and it's something extraordinary to watch, at least for me.
Yeah, and it looks fantastic in IMAX as well. And I say the problem with these movies where it's all franchise, and obviously this is something that's happened in 2 out of the other 13 movies, is, you know, it's hard to sometimes compare that, you know, like the Search for Spock one has been in my head for nearly 2 decades, that the Generations one blew me away as a young kid. So, you know, sometimes it just takes that bit of time. Like, in a few years' time, it'll maybe be easier to say, oh, this one's better for me and this one's a bit better. For instance, I think it's a really cool scene. It's really awesome. It perhaps doesn't pack the emotional punch that the other 2 had for me, but it's still a really fantastic action sequence. I like seeing the crew battling to save the ship. And it looks fantastic.
And it's everybody. What I like about the scene is that, so they get boarded, but everybody is doing something. You know, normally if you're watching the old show, it would be Kirk and a few red shirts, but everybody plays a role. Like there's a point where they have to separate the saucer section because it's still trying to draw power from the engines that aren't there anymore, which is like, I never thought about that, but that's kind of cool. So they have to separate the saucer, but Kirk gets sidetracked because Idris Elba comes on board and starts beating the crap out of him. So who takes it upon themselves when it's discovered that Kirk is not where he's supposed to be? The last person that you would find in the original series who would do that. Uhura.
Yeah, it's so cool just seeing her run, because obviously, like, people are all over the ship doing all different things to help the ship stay afloat, essentially. And it was really cool, and like that's probably what would happen. So, you know, a communication officer is the last thing that's really needed in a moment like that. So she goes off and does something. She doesn't wait for, no one tells her, right, Uhura, you go do it. She just goes and does it.
And I think my favorite Uhura character beat is one where she doesn't even have any dialogue, but it's the part where she knows she can hit the button to separate, and she knows she's going to be trapped with the bad guy, but she does it anyway.
Yeah, she potentially is ending her life there, you know, to save her captain. And sometimes we're so used to being the other way, the captain makes a sacrifice. Uhura could essentially have just died in that moment, but no, she does, you know, thankfully live. But it could have gone either way in that moment, and it's, you know, it's not a big deal. That's just part of being a crew, is sometimes taking those sacrifices for the team.
But that's what I like about, you know, because we saw it a little bit in 09, we saw it more in Into Darkness, and I think we see it the most here. They really, I enjoyed Nichelle Nichols' Uhura in the past, but I really like how they've made her more than just the comm officer in these movies. She's an active, dynamic character who deserves her place among her male counterparts. And I'm not saying a woman has to prove herself to deserve her place, but she really does stand out in these films, and that moment especially for me.
Yeah, she has given so much to do in all these movies, you know, on an emotional level, on a, you know, as an officer level, and that's exciting to watch. That I just don't want to watch the guys having all the fun. You know, I imagine if you've got this amazing actress, give her the stuff to do. She's perfectly capable of doing the action beats and everything like that. Just don't keep her behind the desk, and you know, they've seen the same things that we have.
And talk about other things that are cool/scary. How would you like to be ejected from the ship in a runaway turbo lift?
That's so cool, isn't it? Like, it was such a cool idea, just them like popping out like the bowels of the Enterprise and into space. It was really good.
They're traveling obviously to the different part of the ship, but that's when Idris Elba gives the order, and I love it, to slit its throat, and that's when they attack the neck of the ship and they get discharged.
Yeah, and then they get a nice little journey ride to Earth, to the planet on these little alien drone ships. It was a cool little idea. Like, you can just imagine them in the writing room when they're going, oh, we just have the elevator pop out, type it up, there we go, it's in. It's a really cool idea. It's something I've not seen in Star Trek before, in these thousands upon thousands of hours of entertainment that we've got. Right,
and so like you said, they crash on the planet. They're all split into their normal groups, or not their normal groups, but they're split into groups. And this is where I think a lot of the reviews said that this is where the movie kind of falls apart or goes boring, but not for me. For me, This is when the characters start to come through and really shine. And if we have them working in their unique pairings. I love, obviously I love Bones and Spock. We've talked about them. I really, really enjoyed Kirk and Chekhov, though.
They were my favorite pairing, yeah. Like, it's. Firstly, I want that jackets that
those
Chekhov
jackets are
had.
so cool. Well, Kirk and the ones that Kirk and Chekhov wear, yeah.
I need to get myself one of them. I'll be wearing that when I'm going fishing or going for a hike. I need one of them now. So Paramount, we've been really good to you. We're bigging up your movie. Please send one to Scotland ASAP. Yeah, I really love them because I've said before, Anton Yelchin is an actor I love, and Chekhov is a character I think is fantastic.
He shines so much in this film.
There's so many little moments where he comes alive. That there's a little moment I picked up like this time on my second viewing, that when he's with like Chekhov was always like kind of a bit of a like after the ladies, you know, he was obviously based on was it Davy Jones from the Monkees in the 60s, and he kind of has that like attitude in the way. He's always trying to score, like he's that kind of youthful guy. And there's a bit where I noticed, like, I'm sure he does it, but like when they meet Jayla for the first time, like they're talking, and in the background like Chekhov is like looking her up and down, and I'm pretty sure he looks at her butt, and I was like, that is, obviously we don't condone behavior like that, but I thought that is in keeping with the character, what he was kind of like in the 60s.
Chekhov is kind of a lady killer in this one, because at the very beginning of the movie he's the one being thrown out of the Orion girls' room and not Kirk.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he's still, and like there's points in the movie where he's still trying to, use his little charms and everything like that. And I maybe he wasn't doing it, but I caught his eye. I was like, is that what he's doing? And there's a little bit as well. See when they're jumping down like the rocks and stuff. Like he just does this little, like a little whistle to himself. Like, and he's just. I love that youthful dude. He's like, he doesn't complain about what's happened to them. Like he's just getting on with it and he's embracing it. And that's that kind of youthful excitement that, okay, we're stranded on a planet, I'll just get on with it. And he just has a little whistle to himself. And I thought, man, like, I love that moment.
Well,
it's fantastic.
And the thing that makes it so sad is because, like, I feel like in this movie, like with what you're saying, you see Anton Yelchin just so full of life, and this character is so energetic and ready to go, and he's not there anymore, and it's so tragic. I mean, I know that's not what they were going for when they made the movie, no. But it makes it ever the more bittersweet to see him so full of pep and vigor in this film, and knowing that that's not going to be there next time.
It was like when I did the little eulogy for a few weeks ago in the filibuster for Anton Yelchin, and like when you watched it as like the triple bill, you see him in that first movie, he's got this most youthful, childish like, I could do that. Yeah, and now he's kind of growing into his face, like you can see him like kind of maturing, and it's like you've watched him, especially in like one evening, you've watched him grow up to like nearly like a decade over like the course of an evening, and it just like it's just gutting that he was taken in his prime, really. And he, if this is his last Star Trek movie, and it's a hell of a way to exit, that he gets so many wonderful little lines, little beats, and he infuses so much Anton Yelchin into this role. And we'll miss the guy. Star Trek won't be the same without him. Right.
Let's talk about someone who we haven't talked about, but someone who was an important figure in this movie because, I mean, he wrote it. Simon Pegg as Scotty in this one. He's still the comic relief character, but what I liked about him, and what I was not necessarily worried about, but there's certainly a precedence for, is that when the actors get involved in the writing, it can tend to be a little bit self-aggrandizing. Like I'm thinking like Brent Spiner gets involved in Nemesis and suddenly there's 2 parts for him. You know what I mean? So but I feel like in this film, yeah, he's a very important character because he's the one who not only meets Jayla first, but is instrumental in getting the Franklin working. Mm-hmm. But I don't feel like he hogged the spotlight when he so easily could have as a writer.
Yes. And I think, like, I remember reading an interview with him where he was like, Scotty's not really going to be in this movie much because I've obviously got to kind of deal with some maybe writing issues on the set with the way things were. But, like, I was happy that we got a lot of Scotty. That you've listened to hours and hours of me on the filibuster, ladies and gentlemen. I have not said Lassie as much as he says Lassie in that movie.
But that's Scotty. Like you watch.
Yeah, you'll be having a drinking game of that, where when you watch Beyond on Blu-ray in a few months, people will be taking a shot every time he says Lassie. But he's great, and he gets some really wonderful lines. That I always like that. you can't break a stick in a bundle, and I think that's a really cool line. It's not just some sort of modern thing. It's like a really kind of traditional Scottish remark that you can't break a stick in a bundle, and it's a really cool little line. And I think Scotty's really good in this movie, and he helps, he takes Jayla and then, really kind of pushes her to help them. And, this person that's kind of been left in the wilderness, he's almost this heart that brings her into the fold. And I thought he had a really great role in this movie, and I was really happy with Simon Pegg's performance. And, his writing as well, that there was a little reference that Spaced is one of my favorites.
Yeah, everyone made reference to the Spaced, but I never watched it, so it flew right over my head. But it's skipped to the end. So is that something that he said in the show?
Yeah, it's a line in the show, and it made me smile. I was like, oh, I get that. I get that reference. I thought it was a really cool little beat. And Simon Pegg, the process of writing this movie under the pressures that him and Doug Young were under to get that done in time was like a hell of an achievement.
Like I said, this movie isn't without its plot fallacies like any other movie, but the fact that they only had they were hired in February and they were going to shoot in June. So the fact that they were able to write something in 4 months and it wasn't an absolute disaster, that's an accomplishment in itself.
Yeah.
But let's talk about the new people in this movie, and the one that you just mentioned is the one that I think is the breakout, and that's Sophia Boutella as Jayla. I really enjoyed her in this film. I mean, I know that her backstory isn't necessarily something new, but the energy that she brought to it and the rapport that she was able to have with the cast, and this is her first film, but I felt that she had a good interaction not only with Simon Pegg but with the rest of the crew. And at the end of this movie, she's given acceptance into Starfleet, and I know they showed her as more of the engineering type, but at the same time, with poor Anton Yelchin being gone, I wouldn't mind seeing Jayla turn up as the navigator on the Enterprise A. I mean, that's how much I really enjoyed the character. What did you make of her?
I thought the same. At the end of my second view, and I thought I wouldn't be surprised if we saw her on the bridge in the next one. You never know with these things. That obviously they're not going to recast Anton Yelchin, quite rightly too. So I thought, I wouldn't be surprised if we see her on the bridge. I thought she was really good. I feel that I saw most of her breakout moments in the trailer, but that's okay. I thought there were some really good moments with her. She's definitely leaves an impression. She's a unique looking character as well, and the fact that the Franklin was her ship as well was really good. I never anticipated that was where it was going to go, that it was her home essentially, and the fact that she likes the Beastie Boys, I think me and her would get on very well.
You heard her, she likes the beats and the shouting.
Exactly. So me and her would get on well for a few beers and a night out. So I was really impressed with the character. That, as I say, it's nothing revolutionary, but another kick-ass female in Star Trek, always good.
You're right, that in the sense that they showed her most of her action beats in the trailer, but what they didn't show in the trailer was, like I said, what impressed me most about her is her rapport with the crew. That you can only get from watching the film. And so that brings us to the other big character in this film and ties us into the backstory, which is Krall's backstory, Idris Elba. Now, there's been some criticism that he's more of a generic villain, and to a certain extent I agree, but I feel like once we start learning his backstory, he became infinitely more interesting. And again, what we find out about him isn't unique. It isn't new. It's not like it's never been done in Star Trek before even. But learning the circumstances of who he actually is, and this is a major, major spoiler, and I know that even Paramount spoiled it, but the fact that he's...
So this is why I avoid all these trailers and stuff like that, oh my God.
But the fact that he's actually a human captain and the Franklin is his ship, and... the fact that, were you as shocked as I was? Because we had an inkling from the trailer, but just how much this tied into Enterprise? Because I was.
Yeah. I didn't anticipate the little Enterprise references to the Zindi and the Makos. That you get off
when you're watching the footage that's on the Franklin. they're coming down in the Enterprise shuttle pods, and they're basically, I couldn't really tell because it's like filtered, but I'm pretty sure they're wearing the Enterprise jumpsuits or something that looks exactly
quite similar to it, but not quite, like almost probably the next
it's supposed to be after Enterprise, but it looks very similar to their uniforms. That would have been the next logical evolution of that uniform.
Exactly. Yeah, like I think like the first time I watched it, I was like, yeah, it's all right and all that sort of stuff. He's an okay character. I wasn't fussed because at the end of the day, it was sort of similar to what I said about.
Well, I mean, you just had Nero and Khan to compare him to, so I mean,
like for me, he was quite similar in a way to Daniel Bruhl's character in Civil War, in a way that, like, I'm not really fussed that he's not this big major character because he's not the driving force really of this movie. It's like the main characters and their relationships and like how everything's pushing with them. And like, you know, I don't need him to have this big plan and all that stuff. I just need him there to just gently keep pushing the actual plot along. Like, as long as I'm getting my main characters doing the thing, like, he's just background noise as far as I'm concerned. But on second viewing, I really appreciated his character a lot more, that knowing where he was coming from and like informed my like viewing that at the beginning this villain who can be a bit generic or boring, I was like, I'm starting to see little things, little nods and references to what this journey that this guy's been on. So while at the first viewing it's quite face value, it's a bit nothing special. On second rewatch, if you've probably seen the advert or you've just watched the movie again, it seems to work a lot better and you buy into this journey this character has been on.
Right, and he's the one who I feel like, because they don't ever really explicitly do this in the movie, but I have a feeling that when it's coming down to the end and it's him versus Kirk on the station, he's the one who helps Kirk snap back into focus of why he's in Starfleet and why Starfleet does what it does.
Yes.
He's that great motivating force, and in Pine's scenes with Elba, I feel that's the most Pine has ever been Kirk. And what I mean by that is, like, you heard our podcast last week. I really like Chris Pine as James Kirk, yeah. But in the first two movies, he's kind of like this upstart, brash young kid who's very defiant, and it's very Kirk-like, but it's extremely Kirk-like. Like, he's a bit of a loose cannon. In his confrontation scene with Elba at the end of this movie, I feel like he embodies the same kind of Kirk that Shatner played, where like he's a risk taker, and he's not afraid to do something really rash in order to save the universe. But for the first time, I feel like Pine speaks with this sense of maturity and wisdom and authority that, while I felt like he was good in the last two films, he didn't quite capture that level the way he does in this film, and specifically in his scenes with Elba. I mean, what do you make of that?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you there. That in a way that it's only natural for us to compare the Kirk we all know, that the older Kirk, to this younger Kirk that, you know, command has almost been thrust upon him so young. But now we're getting to get to that stage where they're starting to cross over, perhaps age-wise, and that he is more seasoned. He, you know, like before Star Trek Into Darkness, he hadn't lost a crew member. That everything had gone his way. Like after Into Darkness, he's lost crew members. That he's gone on like into deep space missions. That he is a seasoned professional now. He's seen the world. He's lived the world. He's not just, you know, he was based in Iowa for so long, and now he is this seasoned space captain, and it's only natural that he would have that bit of malaise, but then have that same confidence, that drive that we're starting to see tie into the William Shatner portrayal. And I think Chris Pine is excellent in this movie. I love his fringe. I thought he looked really cool in that as well. But yeah, he's definitely starting to become the Kirk that we're perhaps a bit more familiar with, the Kirk of more like the Star Trek movies, perhaps in the TV show.
Kind of the TV show too, because I could picture, like, in the first two movies, he's not the kind of Kirk that could give a speech the way that Shatner does about the morals and principles of the episode of the week, where I feel like in this movie, this is a Kirk that can give a speech now and have it be believable.
Yeah, for me, he's more like the kind of movie Kirk in the way that he's a bit more human. That in the TV series, that a lot of these characters can almost be a bit caricatures, and you know that was the writing of the time. Whereas with the level of movie writing, you know, thanks to people like Nick Meyer, and Leonard Nimoy, and really good direction helped bring that character from just this TV action hero into someone that was a real life person with doubts, regrets, worries, and I see a lot of that in this Kirk as well. And I think that I'm really excited to see where we'll see Chris Pine in the next Star Trek movie. That I'm really enjoying the journey that he is taking at the moment.
And now, as we start getting toward the end of this film, let's start talking about what could have been. Well, not what could have been. What was a very controversial point in the first trailer actually makes sense within the context of the movie. They haul out the sabotage, and that could so easily be so hokey. But you know what? They at that point, I feel like the movie had done enough good things where they had great character, if not development, then showcasing. They showcase the character so well. The movie's been so much fun that they give a halfway plausible reason why they must broadcast loud music to disrupt the swarm ships. That I went with it. And you know what, my audience did too, because they started cheering.
Like, it wasn't a moment I actually anticipated coming. Like, when they played Beastie Boys earlier, I was like, yeah, it's cool.
It's not the Beastie Boys. They play Public Enemy. She's listening to Fight the Power, and we don't know that she has the Beastie Boys, but now they do.
And it's so cool. Like, you see in the trailer, you think, oh yeah, they've played the Beastie Boys. Like, that's just probably just tying into the movie. And then obviously they play Public Enemy. And then when they play it, like see if, like, I've not seen any fans moan about it. And if they did, I'd be honest, I'd probably roll my eyes. Like, we've seen hundreds of hours of Star Trek, and the amount of times I've heard characters just mouth off some make-believe words to solve a solution like that. Oh, let's triangulate this, let's reverse the polarity to solve this problem. I buy into the thing that they need to make a loud pulse noise to disrupt the thing. And, like, they go, well, why don't we use music? And you know what? It makes perfect sense that instead of, trying to sound, like, smart for the sake of sounding smart, like inventing words and trying to be a thing, sometimes it's a simple idea and it totally makes sense within the spirit of the movie, and it looks really cool, it sounds really cool. If someone was going to moan about that, then I say, would you rather that you watched 100 episodes of Voyager where they just technobabble their way out, or where Geordie LaForge is speaking a foreign language?
This is a Star Trek movie, but at the end of the day, it's still a summer movie too. We've got to have some fun thrown in there. And you know what sold it for me too is the fact that it's referred to as classical music. I thought that was genius.
And, like, I love the way some of the characters are having probably the reaction to some people had to the trailer and music, like, where, like, Chekhov and Sulu kind of look at each other like, oh, this is a bit odd, and, it's just like they kind of all respond differently to it. And Yayla's there, like, tapping her foot, and, like, Kirk, oh, this is a good song. And I was totally on board with it. It's nice to get some, like, an original solution to something in Star Trek that doesn't involve technobabble or some hokey nonsense that they're just, like, winking off at the audience, like, we've created a thing, we don't know how to get out of it. It's something where you think, yeah, that makes sense. Like, a loud noise, a pulse, whatever. Yeah, music, both. Totally on board with it, loved it, and please don't at me if you thought it was stupid. Go. I've sat through thousands of hours of being fobbed off with silly ideas. The Beastie Boys was one of the more plausible reasons to solving a problem. So, thank you, Simon Pegg.
Right, and there was that fear, I think, that there was some mention that Paramount maybe wanted this film to be more like Guardians of the Galaxy, and that got a lot of fans nervous, and I really don't think it was, except for this moment, but at least in this moment, they found a plot reason for it to be there. And you can debate whether or not it's a good plot reason, but hell, at least it's there for a reason instead of for the sake of being there.
I mean, not to blow our own trumpets, which, love doing, that, like, when we spoke before about, like, they wanted to make this a bit more like Guardians of the Galaxy, and people were like, no, that's not what Star Trek is, and we're like, no, listen to what they're saying. They want to make it like more like Guardians of the Galaxy, where that is a team of misfits and different characters and skill sets coming together to solve a problem. It's not that they're going to go make Guardians of the Galaxy meet Star Trek. They're just looking at something that is what Star Trek does well and hasn't necessarily done it very well in the films, apart from a few exceptions. That's what like sometimes think some people just get so caught up in like, oh, they're going to do it superficially, like Guardians of the Galaxy.
I mean, even you watch Guardians of the Galaxy, and Chris Pratt is basically Han Solo meets Captain Kirk all in one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like Star Trek's just looked at that and thought, you know what? That's what maybe we should have been doing. That like they've taken an element of Star Trek, and it's sometimes you need to see it reflected back in yourself to go. Sometimes like they've shown that the old ways are still just as good. That teamwork and coming together is sometimes the best solution, and that's always been Star Trek's message. So they're like, right, let's look at that. And some people are just like, oh, it just means they're going to do music, and there's going to be a talking raccoon on the bridge, and I thought it was really cool.
A soundtrack. No, it worked out just fine. And then, of course, we wrap up with the end of the movie, that wonderful tribute for Leonard Nimoy with the picture and the party scene, which this had to be an editing choice in the last minute, but Kirk says to absent friends, and then it cuts to a next scene where Chekhov is right in frame.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how. Like, I would think that they obviously had a little bit of time left before the film was finished. Well, yeah, and I thought it was a really nice touch. It didn't linger on it so much. It was just kind of a bit moment there, and really, like it breaks your heart once again, and
this is a geek thing for me, but the wonderful note to send this movie out on is we get to see the Enterprise A, this universe's version of the Enterprise A, and even though you only see it for a few seconds, I don't know if you like tried to pay attention more to it the second time, Lee.
Yes.
But when you see it, and it still looks like a Kelvin-verse Constitution class, but the way that the nacelles are a little bit different, and the markings remind me more of the TOS movies versus the one that we've spent the last two movies for, and I thought that was a nice touch. Like, we've now fused the old with the new in this new ship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I definitely want to see a screen cap of that so I can really take it in. That I think I get so caught up in like the crew all taking turns to say space,
which is
Final
I love
Frontier.
That's probably
so cool.
I think that's probably my favorite ending space, the final frontier of these three movies, is that everybody gets to do it.
Yeah, like it's so cool here in the Chekhov, Uhura, like Kirk, everyone getting to say a little bit. But there's one thing I want to say before it ends. Like, it really struck home like the second time round. Like I don't know if you saw yesterday, they had the Star Trek panel where they were talking about the new series, and they were talking about like Star Trek and diversity and how Star Trek's more important than ever. And it's like it's so 100% right. And like you watch these Kelvin movies, and this one especially, like you see the Enterprise crew, which is made up of different aliens, different races from all around mankind. Now we've got LGBT representation on the Enterprise. It really is a diverse starship. But like the one thing that I was really like struck by this time, that I think enhanced the Idris Elba role was I think people like Simon Pegg and Doug Young, when they were writing the movie last year, saw potentially the way the world was going at the moment, that we see it especially in the West just now, that we see a character that is like Idris Elba's character, Cruel. And, we've got a character that believes in division, that this is a character that fought in wars and is a very seasoned, older character that's telling people that, we should have living in fear and terror is what makes us stronger individuals, and now we're instead focused on breaking bread with the enemy. And I was really reminded of like a lot of the parallels you see a lot with the youth of today versus the kind of a lot of the older generations, where there seems to be a real divide. That obviously recently in the UK we had like the vote to depart Europe, and one of the key bits that came out of it was that they broke down the voter demographics, and older people voted to exit the European Union, where younger people voted to stay in because they believed in unity, partnership, working together with all these different races in the EU and not giving in to fear. And then I was watching it this time thinking Kirk represents that youth, that attitude that we do have to break bread with people that we of different backgrounds, and that we don't necessarily should give into fear about, we see politicians that we won't give any publicity to here that will look to demonize people, that we should be in terror of people, we should be fearful of other people. but instead that we've got the youthful characters, the Kirk and Uhura's and Sulu's talking about our unity, that when we're working together, people in the United States coming together, people in Europe coming together, that's what makes us stronger, and that's what we should be doing, is that breaking bread and not giving in to terror and fear. And I really thought that came home really strongly in the second go, that Krall is very much a character of now, that we look at, say, Star Trek 6, that we've got characters that represent those at the end of the Cold War, that those are fighting against the future, essentially. You've got someone in Krall that is fighting the future, essentially, that Kirk makes an excellent point, that's very similar to perhaps the older people that voted to leave, say, something like Europe, that you fought the wars so that we can live in peace, and that these older people that are wanting to perhaps leave, things like Europe or create walls, are, people that have done so much for us to live in these times where we want to break bread with our enemies, that to work together in a partnership. And I thought there was so many wonderful parallels with what is going on in the world today. In Star Trek, it may not look like it, but once again, Star Trek is representing the modern world we're living in, and it's a very timely Star Trek movie. It's the movie we need now. We need Star Trek more than ever again.
Right, and it's just a wonderful sentiment that this film captured so much of what made Star Trek special. So, wrapping it up, Lee, I mean, it's too new. I don't think we should rank it yet, but what are your final thoughts on Beyond? For now.
Yeah, I'm the same as you. It's really, really hard to rank a movie like this. Like, for me, I would give it like something like a 4 out of 5 at the moment. But the thing with like franchise movies and Star Trek movies is that, like, for me, like, all of them, even the worst ones, like, they all come with different baggage, memories, experiences. Whether it's like Star Trek 5 is obviously the worst film, but I always remember getting it as the first ever Star Trek video as a kid, like opening it on a birthday. Star Trek Into Darkness, well, people think it's a very flawed movie. I think of going to see it with a live audience and the cheers when Leonard Nimoy appears and when the ship comes out of the clouds. And Star Trek Beyond is just brand new into the world, that I've only seen it twice. My memories with it are very small at the moment, and like moments like this where I'm getting to talk about it are part of that experience of letting Star Trek Beyond breathe. So I'm really excited to see where my journey with Star Trek Beyond goes, that I'm already seeing things in it that I'm loving more on a second viewing. I'm looking forward to, I'm going to see it a few more times easily at the cinema because it's so easy for me to do so. So at the moment, I'm really enjoying it, and I'm looking forward to going on an adventure with this. That new Star Trek is always something I love and appreciate, and I'm looking forward to developing a relationship with this movie.
Yeah, me too. I can't wait to see the movie more. I can't wait to talk about it more. It's just so fresh and new in my mind. But yeah, I think this is a big win for us as Star Trek fans, and I don't know what else to say. I this may end up being my favorite of the three just because of the characterizations in it, but it's too early to say. But I think that this is a big victory.
Yes.
Thank you so much for joining us for this look at Star Trek Beyond. What did you guys think of the film? We can't wait to talk about this with other people. If you want to talk about it with us, you can reach us personally on Twitter. I'm at mhanson0207. Where are you, Lee?
I'm at Lee_Nostromo. And yeah, like, let's go on a journey to Star Trek Beyond together. I'm looking forward to hearing what other people thought of it. I want to hear people's personal stories, and I'm hyped for when it's no longer, taboo to talk about spoilers and everyone can start talking about it and dissecting things, and it's going to be exciting
for sure. And I'm sure you're going to hear opinions on Star Trek Beyond from a lot of people on our network. Like I said, Tristan and his wife are going to do one on Nerd Nuptial. Matt Rushing from Aggressive Negotiations has already written a review on the Nerd Party page,
which you can find on Facebook / The Nerd Party.
And I'm sure John will be commenting it on some point soon.
That's not like John. John's a wallflower. He tends to keep himself to himself.
But we hope you tune in for all of that stuff. Thank you for joining us through our journey with Star Trek Beyond. And until next time, live long and prosper.
Join the revolution. Join the Nerd Party.
Welcome to Nerd Party.